Screencast 52, Charting Part 6, Dynamic Series of Data. Okay, where did we leave off? We have three series of data here, right? There was A, B, and C. And A, B, and C were actually columns in the data set. In other words, they're known ahead of time that we have three series and they have names. But a lot of times we don't, in the real world, we don't have knowledge of what the series are going to be. We don't know how many they are. We don't know what they're called. So having a data come back like this is kind of difficult, right? So what I'm going to show you next is how to handle a case where you have a dynamic number series. So we're going to replicate this chart using that technique, right? Now, I've already created a data set called blog post data 2. I just want you to compare one by one the values here, right? So ordinal is still there. You'll see it'll look a little bit different though. There were 30 values in the original blog post data. And so there were, basically from 0 to 29 were the ordinal values. Those values are still here, but now we're going to be seeing 30 times 3, because we have three series of data, and you'll see the ordinals come in as 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, blah, blah, blah. Data's still there, bucket name, and bucket ordinal. So this is another technique of saying how to identify this series. And I use this name bucket name because I don't want to reuse the word series. It looks kind of confusing sometimes. And bucket ordinal. That lets us do things like sort which series are going to show first or last, etc. And finally, the count. So again, here are the common ones. The date, ordinal, right? And the counts are implicit here in the first data set, but it's explicit here in the second. Before I continue, I want to show you how I created this data. It's actually, of course, a data method, and I'm actually taking advantage of some new C# syntax that creates these anonymous types. And I wrote a method in my helper library that's called data table from enumerable. So it'll just automatically create the data set with the right types and column names. So if you look on our Codeplex project, you can download the code here and use it for yourself. Anyway, let's go ahead and start developing this chart. Okay? Now, I don't want to delete the old one because I wanted to compare the two, but I'll just make it invisible for a while. So I'll set its visibility property in the data region to false. If I go to this RDesign and preview, you'll now see I can't see the chart anymore, okay? But I didn't want to delete it. And actually, I'll rename this to XY chart static series, so it's obvious, and we'll add a new chart for the dynamic series. So again, right-click on the auto-design, add XY chart, and I'll call this XY chart dynamic series. I left off an S, and I'll click up here to move it to the top. If I click here, you'll see there's nothing bound there yet, so it's giving you all these errors. Now I start binding the data. Again, I go to the data region, and I set the data set to blog post data 2, right? And let's start binding things. So it picked up all these things, and we don't, not all these will be in data. We only want the count in data. So what's the categories? The categories is the date, and the bucket name will be used as the series, and I'll get rid of bucket ordinal and this ordinal value. And actually, before I continue any further, I'll make this invisible. I want to show you what the data is. That way there's no ambiguity about what I'm doing here. Copy it there, move it up. It's just a table. I'll set the style template. That way you can see what I'm getting back in the data set. And I'll turn my zoom up to 100. So the ordinal is now, again, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. That's what we expected. And that's why, earlier I said it's not like a row number, but it sometimes seems like it. You were probably wondering why I went to the overhead. And actually, this is why I was leading to this example. The date's there, the bucket name, post A, right? And then the bucket ordinal, and then the count, right? So it's a little bit more generic than our previous table. Okay, I'll get rid of this, and I'll make the chart visible. Let's take a look at what it's going to give me. Okay, and it's difficult to see right now, so I'll go ahead and change this chart type to a line. And you can just compare this one with the chart below it. And let me make it a little smaller. I think this was about 6 inches and 2.5. Okay, and I'll go ahead and set the style template here to line chart style template, right? And then we'll re-enable the other one. We'll just compare the two. You should see very similar sort of lines. Visible equals true. And I'll zoom out. It'll be more obvious that way. And you can see, I mean, there are different lengths, but they have the same pattern. So we know we're actually matching the data up correctly. Okay. Now, I'll go ahead and make this invisible, the bottom one. False. We're back to just the top one. And there we go. Okay. And let's just do a quick amount of formatting to clean up things. We'll go ahead and set the title to 30-day viewing history. We'll get rid of the axis titles by entering equals an empty string. And we'll change the categories to the date. We don't want to see the date anymore. We wanted, if you remember from the previous screencasts, we wanted the ordinal value. So let's try that out. Ordinal. What will happen? There you go. But we wanted it in reverse. So from bigger to smaller number, 29 minus the value. And there and then we have our chart. Now, do you remember the previous examples when I had the other bar chart, right? Let me bring it up here. Let's render it again. So I want you to see the problem we're going to encounter when you have dynamic series. Okay. So you can kind of see we have the lines, right? And let's say I want the colors, right? Post A, I go data series. Let's go ahead and make the line style red here. We'll make post B be orange, and post C we'll leave it a yellow. A little bit hard to see maybe, but there we go. Okay, so now you can see I was directly able to set the colors. Now you'll see the problem we have with these dynamic series, which is we don't have any ability to go to the, let me close this, go there. Well, what color can I pick? If I try to pick red, you can see what's going to happen here. Right, there's our problem. When you have a dynamic series, how do you pick the color, right? Because everything is going to be set to red. Well, that's why we have those data methods, and that's why there's a bucket ordinal. We can actually use that to pick colors. I'll show you how. So, let's go ahead and create a new data method. I'll rename this to getColor2. Apply there, and it's going to return a string. And what we're going to do is we're going to have an input value, which is the bucket ordinal. And we're going to take that and give different values back, right? So we'll call it, this is the, call it the bucket ID or bucket ordinal. Denol. Okay. And then we'll just do it like this. If bucket ordinal is 0, then I'll return red. FF0000. I could actually type in the word red, but I prefer to do it this way, just because of my computer graphics background. If the bucket ordinal is 1, I'll make it, I don't know, FFAA. That should be a kind of orange. And then if the bucket value, well, else, I'll say we'll return a bright yellow. Actually, maybe this is a bit too bright there. I'll try 88. That should be okay. Okay, that's it. We have 3 colors based on the bucket ordinal. Let's go ahead and compile to make sure nothing is broken. Okay, good. Now we'll go to the series, the data here, and we're going to override the line style. Can't do red anymore. We want to look at the expression. And actually, let me copy something, because I always mess this up if I type it myself. I'm going to copy this. We'll edit the expression. And what I want to do is get color 2. I'm going to pass it in the bucket ordinal. Right? So not the count, but the field spang bucket ordinal. Just like that. And let me get rid of that spurious equal sign. I do press OK, make sure everything's built. And now, let's take a look. And there we go. I know the yellow is really hard to see here, but you can see that the red and the orange and the yellow have all appeared. And this is the technique for handling multiple series of data when you're coming back and you want to select the right color. Like I said, it's a little bit more complicated when it's so dynamic, but a lot of reports are actually built this way. And as we go through more screencasts, I'll show you other examples of getting even better and better looking formatting with these charts. But we have to learn this technique to make sense of anything else in the future. Okay, so in future screencasts, we'll cover more. See you then.